President Trump bringing Democrats and Republicans together tonight for dinner at the White House. 3 senators from each party expected to discuss tax reform with President Trump, and also Vice President Mike Pence. Comes just days after the president struck a spending deal with Democrats that had Democrats celebrating. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell now saying that Chuck Schumer's celebration was premature. Putting it this way, he says, let's put it this way, the deal is not quite as good as my counterpart thought it was. Let's bring in Utah Senator Mike Lee, who is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning.
Do you think they'll make progress with this dinner tonight? Where do you see tax reform going?
I don't know. What I do know is the American people are expecting and demanding tax reform. We have a tax code that punishes people for getting married. We also have a tax code that punishes people for having children. I've brought forward a proposal that I've worked on with Senator Marco Rubio and also with Ivanka Trump that would end the parent tax penalty, and I hope that's included in any package.
Okay, you voted no on the aid package last week that was tied to the debt ceiling and some other things. You said the American people deserve better. Today, what we're hearing from the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, is he's saying the way that it's structured, that the way that it's written, that there may actually be a little bit more time on the debt ceiling. It may not be tied to these hard and fast deadlines in December. So you voted no on the deal. How do you think it plays out now?
I don't know, but I do know, Shannon, that it's bad policy to tie debt ceiling increases with hurricane relief bills, with spending bills. When you lump all these decisions into one, the lines of accountability from each elected official back to his or her constituents gets blurred. That's why I think it would be much better if we broke these into digestible pieces and allowed them to be debated and discussed separately so that the American people can have a say in what goes on in their government.
But does it present now more difficult separate votes for Republicans, especially in what will be a midterm election year?
Well, I think anytime we get accustomed to lumping everything into one, it's going to be more difficult the next time to decouple them. That's one of the reasons why we shouldn't get into this practice in the first place, and one of the reasons why I hope we'll do it differently next time.
I want to ask you about a hearing that you were part of as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. A number of judicial nominees are now flooding their way through the Senate as President Trump tries to fill a number of vacancies across the federal system. One of them was Notre Dame law professor Amy Barrett. I want to play a little bit of what Senator Feinstein had to say to her last week when asking about her Catholic faith.
When you read your speeches, the conclusion one draws is that the dogma lives loudly within you. And that's of concern.
She wasn't the only one. We also heard similar questions and intimations from Senator Dick Durbin, another Democrat. And it made me think back to when Senator Sanders earlier in the summer was asking a Christian nominee to be a deputy director at the OMB about his faith and hinting that he may be Islamophobic. What's going on up there?
This is a disturbing trend to the extent that any of these comments might reflect belief by coastal elites in a secular dogma of sorts, one that is to be aggressively enforced. That is itself very disturbing. Look, our Constitution prohibits the use of religious tests. Any religious test to determine someone's eligibility or lack thereof to serve in a federal office is itself unconstitutional. It also has no place in our society. As a religious minority myself, I'm very sensitive to any suggestion that someone ought to be disqualified or made less eligible for a federal office by virtue of the fact that their religious beliefs live strongly within them.
I got to say that what we've seen in that hearing last week and the earlier one in the summer with Senator Sanders, it seems like there is a very targeted skepticism about the Catholic faith or about Protestants or Christians. Can you imagine a scenario in which one of these senators would ask somebody of a different faith tradition, a Muslim or Hindu or anyone else, about whether that would impact their ability to be a good judge, a fair judge?
If such a question were raised, people would be outraged, and understandably so. It therefore stands to reason that we ought to be equally outraged when someone asks this question of someone who is a devout Catholic or an evangelical Christian, as has happened in the last few days in the case of Professor Barrett, or in the case of an evangelical Christian with Russ Vought a few months ago with Senator Sanders.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on those nominees and everything else you guys are dealing with, tax reform, the debt ceiling, all of it. Senator Lee, check in with us and let us know how it's going.
Will do. Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Bill.